Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, that's cool. So how many of you seen a presentation about AI today? Okay. So what I want to do today is to talk about Fosway's research around what's really going on around AI and how we see that changing the market. I know, it keeps moving though. Okay. If it flips up, tell me, okay? In case you're not familiar, we are a research analyst firm. I set up Fosway 28 years ago, so more than 20 feels like I probably wrote that a few years ago. We look at all things around HR, talent, learning, and we're looking a lot of future trends and understanding what's really going on. We also publish the Fosway 9 grids, which you might be aware of, which are the assessment of the vendor supply options in the market as well. The data I'm going to share with you today, so David gave you some kind of thoughts around trends and concept. I'm going to just give you data. So there will be lots of charts. By all means, if you want to take photographs, you can get hold of the slides, and all of the infographics, all the charts you're going to do are available from our website. You can just download those anyway. This data was published in November-December timeframe, so it's pretty current, but we will be updating it again because anything to do with AI gets out of date very quickly. It's moving so fast, we constantly have to reassess it. I have one slide that says, pontificates around the world, and it's really, in some ways, picking up on some of the things David was talking about. We always overestimate, in some ways, with technology, how it's going to impact the short term. Oh, the world's going to change, and everybody's going to stop, and it's all going to be done by AI. And then a year on, you find, well, actually, some of that was true, but not much of it. But we always tend to underestimate the impact of it on a longer term basis. And I think with AI, and I'll come back to this at the end, if you're in an L&D role, if you're in a learning function, and also if you're in HR, we're looking a lot around AI is going to support and help and do what you're doing. But AI is going to fundamentally change the workforce, and it's going to fundamentally change what HR and learning do and who it employs. So that's one of the things I want to touch on, in this case, with a bit of a learning-specific lens. So I have a question for you, right? So if you think about thinking about AI and looking ahead a few years, how much of what L&D does today will you think will be replaced by AI? Right? How much of what we do today will be replaced by AI? Is it 5%, 10%, 25%, 50%? So we asked this question to our HR audience in Q4 last year, and half the people thought that for HR processes, between a quarter and half of what HR does will be replaced by AI. This is turkeys voting for Christmas. This is the HR professionals saying their function will be changed and their jobs will be replaced, right? A quarter thought more than 50% of what HR does will be replaced by AI, okay? So again, 2030 is a longer term horizon, but clearly from a functional perspective, there is a sense that this is going to hit and impact everybody. When you ask the same audience, where were you already applying this? So right at the top of the tree, recruiting and talent acquisition has been one of the first areas where you've seen lots of AI being embedded in the process. How do I write job descriptions? How do I personalize adverts to find new employees? How do I do all those things? But look at what's following afterwards. L&D, skills, talent mobility, all of those areas are really high up on the top of the tree around adoption. And this is looking at it from a wider macro HR and people landscape. This is a question that we ask always within our HR research as well, which is, what is the biggest challenge that your business is aligning to? What is the biggest factor you're focusing on? Number one for the last 10 years has been performance increase the performance and profitability of my company. That's the biggest focus area, the biggest goal. 2 years ago, skills appeared right at the top of the list from almost nowhere, literally elevated itself up. And this year, number 3 was around managing AI and automation. So again, that was 7th, I think, the previous year. So the level of change here is quite profound. But those things fit together. When you look at what's driving a lot of AI and L&D, skills has been a really kind of primary focus area for it. But also, we're starting to see it massively impact content production, and other forms of kind of media. So skills, AI, and costs are almost emerging together as a sort of critical nexus that's going to drive the way a lot of this stuff is impacting the L&D function. Let me give you a kind of some data points around that. The reason skills is still at the top of that list is because most companies still have significant skills challenges. They cannot recruit enough skilled people, and if you can't get rid of people, the people you have don't have the skills you need to do the job you want them to do. So there's a really big focus then about how do we reskill and upskill, and that's obviously the subject of many presentations in its own right. And when you focus on asking the question how important to that is, it is perceived as a high priority issue, including by the C-suite. So this is not an L&D issue, it's seen by the board of the company as a critical challenge to a drop. So skills is a big driver of change and of the way we're trying to invest and do these things. So again, that's a big driver from an AI perspective. Also, when you look at L&D goals, the L&D goals themselves have changed. We've been asking this question for about 12 years. The number one answer in terms of the top strategic priority for L&D was compliance, right? For 12 years, the answer was compliance is the number one goal for my L&D function. Now it's upskilling and reskilling. So that's a big change. Compliance is still quite a big one. It's number 2 still, right? But the focus around skills will be a big driver of what we're doing and why we want to adopt this. If I ask about AI, one of the things that's interesting around the AI piece is how much of this are you doing and where will it apply, where will it impact you? So at the moment, and what I'm showing here is 23 to 4 data and 24 to 25 data. So the blue line is what people said last year, and the green line is what they said this year. So we've gone from, going back to the question I asked you at the beginning, how much is it going to replace in what L&D has? It's gone from 16% people saying a lot to 37% saying a lot. It's gone from 8% saying a great deal to 21%. So 58% are either saying it's going to impact the function a lot or a great deal. That shift has happened within 12 months. Okay, so we're still at the very early stages of adoption here. The biggest drivers around it generally are around efficiency, learning effectiveness, quality, optimizing design. So again, probably a productivity kind of things, or optimizing delivery. So the biggest drivers around AI adoption at the moment, and this is somewhat reflected outside, if you look at the vendors, talking about how do you accelerate your content creation cycle using AI? You know, how do you create synthetic media and video using AI? Okay, so a lot of what is about speeding up what we already do or trying to make that process more efficient. What the question is that all it really is? Really, is that all we're trying to do to drive with AI? What about the fact that the learner may not be there anymore, or that they've got a completely different skill set? What about the fact that maybe we don't even learn anything anymore because we go to ChatGPT and it just tells us the answer? Right? How do we rethink what this is about rather than just reimagine how we did it using AI? And this is, I think, a significant shift for us. Lots of lines. I don't know if you can actually read those at the back. But when you look at where AI is actually being piloted and implemented at the moment, AI media generation and AI for translations are the number 1 and 2 area by some margin. Nearly 40% or so of companies are already just either already using or piloting. Okay, so this is a chart that will change very quickly. When we do the next cycle of this, we would expect some quite big movement. But there's a very long list. AI for adapted learning, AI for assessments. There are many, many areas within the learning offering where we see AI be impacting. So it's very early stages, but we can see where it's already starting to impact in terms of what companies are doing and using it for. And this is questions to the corporates, to you, not to the vendors. It's not what are the vendors using it for, it's what are you using it for within your L&D operation. Do you think it's hype? How many of you think AI is very hyped up? Okay, about 3 hands. So all of you should put your hands up because it is very hyped, right? Now that doesn't mean is it overhyped is another question, right? Is this real or is it a thing? In reality, this is coming down the pipe very quickly, okay? What's interesting is we asked this question a while ago. So as you can see, nearly half people say it's not, but the number that said it was has gone up. Right? It was actually high teens before. It's now 24%. And this is a very interesting point. When I looked at an example of this is if you look at the learning systems, where again AI, that was like 3rd on the list of areas for application, but 69% of you are saying that the use of AI in your LMS or LXP is below expectation. So you're starting to use it, but it's a bit underwhelming. Is it that effective? Do you have the right data? What is it around it? But at the end of the day, there's a lot to be developed here. There's a lot to be progressed before we really are in a position where it becomes dominant. But the data is here. The trend is clear, okay, in terms of what we're trying to do. One of the factors that will impact all of this is money. Yeah? How much is it going to cost you to buy those AI tools? If you have an LMS or an HR system, is it going to cost you more money to buy AI, to have the AI features, or are you going to get it for the same price you're paying today? Right? So economics here is a factor to consider as well. And that's really relevant because economically, we are in a difficult time in Europe. Yeah? Most companies have tighter budgets, less money to invest on these things, not more. So you can see here, we asked the question about how much your investment on L&D, and you've got 36% either showing they're delaying investment or stopping it at all. The economic climate is impacting investment. And it's also impacting where we invest within the L&D model. If you look at outsourcing digital learning, that's dropped by 26%. 26% of people saying they're reducing their investment in it. Digital learning content as a whole is continuing to grow. So, this is a growth story, but obviously you're starting to see more red on the equation as well. Look at the top one though, AI content authoring, up by 51%. Right, so the fastest growing area, and what people are doing, they're shifting a resourcing model, and particularly around content, to pay external people to create content, to getting their own subject matter experts to create content supported by AI tools. And you can see when you then start looking at how do you resource projects, upskilling subject matter experts, plus 69, AI to support content creation, plus 68. So if any of you are a vendor and you're in the content provision business, you are under threat. We are already seeing this when we look at our digital learning analysis, particularly. We're seeing a shift in where companies are spending their money and the expectations around the cost of content production as well. AI is impacting this very significantly. And customers are expecting to pay less sometimes for this stuff because of it, because they know the vendors have access to the tools as well, So therefore, they're producing stuff faster. So does that mean you get it for cheaper, or that the company providing you gets a better margin on it? Okay, so this is starting to impact in the buying cycle quite a lot. So all of those are lots of data points that are talking to you about AI impacting, even though it's early stages, where it's going to impact, some of the areas of where companies are actually really deploying it today, and what they are doing related to that. So the question is, if you're in L&D, what do you do? Okay, so this is the last part of the section really, talking about, okay, given all of that potential, where do you need to think about it? So I'm just going to leave you with 3 models, if you like, of how you should think about AI. I've given you the data points when you go back and look at the slides about the specifics of where and what, but I want to think about where is it going to be applied. We've talked a lot about AI within the content creation piece, but the content creation is one part of a much bigger life cycle of that L&D operates and serves, right? How it builds strategy and delivers stuff, how it builds specific solutions and content, how it delivers and executes, how it innovates, and so on. This is a kind of learning team role operating model type focus on things. When I think about that from an AI perspective, AI is going to impact all parts of that, from both strategic planning, audience identification, personalization of content, the creation of the content, the role that how L&D administers the process or not, whether it becomes replaced by it. This is not about one part of the operating model, it's about all parts of the operating model. So when you think about it, and this is possibly a slide that is worth downloading afterwards, right? Think about where it's going to apply across all of those, and then what are your priority lists? Where are you being pushed to do more with less, faster, and so on? The second thing that AI is going to do is it's going to continue this process of trying to create and transform experience. So the key thing that an AI also enables us to do is to move from, one size fits all, you can have any color you like is black, if you like, in terms of the industrial production model of content, towards a situation where it's personalized to you, right? It becomes adaptive to you within the learning process. There's lots of parts of this which are impacting the way the whole thing is not just built, but fulfilled and engaged with. So think about, and this model on the right really thinks around how the synthesis of how we bring together formal, informal, collaborative learning, the in-workplace, formally delivered, and so on. Some of the things David was talking about as well. But how do you actually create and personalize that uniquely to optimize the outcome for every individual learner? We're aware that AI will help things like LMSs and LXPs personalize recommendations for learning. But when you go to the learning, it's still the same stuff. If you've gone to the same course I've gone to, we've still done exactly the same thing, regardless of our difference in role or experience or anything. Increasingly, we will move beyond this in personalization. And the final thing is, when you think about it across the learning cycle, so this is what we call our plasma model, where you start from plan, learn, apply, sustain. So think about the whole life cycle around learning. It's not just about acquiring knowledge. It's about applying knowledge. It's about being able to, skill is not something you just learn in isolation from doing. Think about how AI can help accelerate that process and support that process across the whole learning cycle. So it will change the operating model, it changes the experiences we create, and it changes the life cycle within which those experiences live. That is why, ultimately, AI will have a massive impact within L&D, because not just because it's a great way of creating content quickly, but ultimately it changes the whole game of what we're about. And if I go back to the quote at the beginning about thinking about, are we over or underestimating what's going to happen, overestimating short term, underestimating in the long term? The key thing is, the biggest risk that you have is sitting there and looking at that AI and thinking, this is a good way of automating what we already do. I can create the content faster, that's good enough. The reality will be that unless we rethink, realign, and engage differently, we will miss that opportunity. Yeah? We must transform, not just replace what we do in terms of the processes that L&D has. And there is a very compelling reason to do that. Because if you don't, you risk being transformed and replaced. Yeah? Ultimately, when we go back to that question at the beginning, there is a fairly high chance that 50% of what L&D does today will cease to exist in that future, because we will be able to use some of the technology to replace it, rethink it, or not even bother doing it because we completely engage with it a different model. I hope some of that data is useful. I hope that gives you a sense of how we're looking at this. We have a very large project we're running at the moment around AI in learning and in talent and HR. If any of you specifically from a corporate point of view interested in finding more about that, very happy to do it. It's a very long and deep project running across the next 6 months with many elements to it. As I said, those infographics, the data points, not just about AI, but around investment and technology priorities and ecosystem and infrastructure are all available from the Fosway website, or you can come to the Fosway stand on L40 and we will be able to give you a link and you can just download them directly onto your phone. Thank you very much. Any questions or not? Does anybody have a question, or do we let the real Donald H. Taylor come on stage? Thank you very much.